Across the Park podcast is proud to be sponsored by Globe Gas and Heating. For the best kitchen and bathroom renovations, boiler servicing and repair, and central and underfloor heating in the Northwest, head over to globecentralheating.com and quote Across the Park for a free quote.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Across the Park podcast. It's that time of the week again, although it's happened a few times in the last few weeks. We are doing our opposition preview and really privileged to be joined once again by Lee, the Dorset Spur, to preview the visit of Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday. Lee, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Depends if you're asking me about from a football perspective or whether you're talking about a life perspective. So from a life perspective...
We always start with life. We always start with life, otherwise I'd never have a smile on my face.
Exactly that. I feel your pain.
We'll get onto that in a moment. I'm starting to get a bit emotional when that preview comes onto our podcast now, because obviously we're fast approaching the final game at Goodison Park, and I know I'm going to start with that because you obviously went through the same thing with White Hart Lane. How was that for you when you eventually waved goodbye to White Hart Lane?
The trouble is, it's like everything. I mean, you're certainly looking back. The grass is always greener, and everything was better in the past, and all the rest of it. But you're kind of hopeful that this is going to kick you on and move you forward, and all that kind of stuff. And we look back at White Hart Lane and think, it was a great place, and all that kind of stuff. But it was a bit of a tip, it was falling down, it wasn't a great place, to be honest. Like, it had its time, but we always look upon it with fondness because it was your home for so many years and you've had so many great memories there and stuff like that. So I think when they did our stadium, they tried to incorporate a lot of history from the old place. Being on the same location as well was really cool. But of course it's never going to be the same. It's just different. And it's something you're gonna find out very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's fair to say that throughout the journey of the the design and everything, they definitely took a lot of inspiration from your stadium. For me, as an away fan, it's far and away the best stadium I've been to in terms of the match day experience. Still capturing that authenticity of the fans being, I think the acoustics are brilliant in your stadium, and I know for a fact that was the big case study for our designers, our architects, and it's been very much at the heart of things. And I know with it being on the dock, there's definitely a lot of history involved as part of the heritage of the city and everything. So I am hopeful, as a lot of Evertonians are, that actually comes across, and we do feel that when we get in. But we'll soon see, as you say.
Yeah, I say with us, with the acoustics and everything, it's really important for the owners and for the fans. But you've still got to get the people to sing and to create that atmosphere, right? So that's the important bit.
Yeah, the fans make it without doubt. I guess I just look at the and it's a completely different situation. But you look at the London Stadium and how much West Ham has struggled with that because it wasn't a purpose-built football stadium. Obviously, Daniel Levy. Think of him what you will in terms of the on the pitch stuff and whatever. He's obviously struck the perfect balance between commerciality and the authenticity of a proper football stadium.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm one of these people where I'm not against the stadium being used for other stuff. The issue with that is it should always still be about the football team. Because if it wasn't for the football team, no one's going to want to go and just play some random stadium in Tottenham. You've been to Tottenham, you've been to the area. It's really deprived. There's a lot of poverty there. It needs investment and it needs support and all the rest of it. But no one's going to do that if it wasn't for the football club. And I think the owners have lost sight of that. And that's the disappointing thing, is that they're just making the money and all the rest of it and building their legacy of this great stadium, this great venue. But this is built on the backs of people, not just like me, but like, all football fans that have made Tottenham Hotspur what it was, what it is, what it could be. So I think that's something they need to keep in their minds. Obviously they won't, but they should.
Oh, fair enough, Lee. I'm all for that, and that's the great thing about these podcasts where we're speaking to opposition fans, is we do get a greater insight into the I guess the real football fan ethos, etc. So thanks for that insight. So we'll get on to matters on the pitch, unfortunately for both of us.
Yeah.
And obviously we're fresh off another disappointing results, arguably performance, but I'll ask you on that. I'm not going to ask you to fully review the game last night, but what are your feelings, obviously, on the back of a defeat in the North London derby?
I guess it's not too. It wasn't to be expected, right? We got such a poor record there anyway, and that a derby, anything can happen in a derby, right? I think being it played down that they were going through a difficult time with their injuries and stuff really annoyed me, considering where we are with injuries and stuff. But this is a really young team that's trying to get there. You've got players playing out of position, but then arguably you've got players just not performing, and they're not performing to where they should be, and letting the manager down, letting the fans down. Individual errors cost us, and that's really, really disappointing. But it wasn't unexpected that was going to happen. It just feels like that's our luck at the moment. We're getting luck, but it's all bad. So. Yeah, disappointed, really upset about it, as always when you lose against your main rival, because obviously we really, really hate each other. I know lots of fans will say that about their rivals, but we really, really do hate each other. And it's all just for football, nothing else but football. Both sides. So, yeah, it's difficult, especially when you work with Arsenal fans and you've got family that are Arsenal fans and all the rest of it. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Indeed, it's not, and again, I feel your pain, and I'm pretty certain that I'll be feeling your pain again in a few weeks' time when we meet Liverpool, but we'll soon see. And we always harbour hope in our naive minds. But no, just going back to your point around the young side, though, and to be fair, I've been so impressed by the likes of Archie Gray, the way he stepped up in that centre back position. There's a bit of like John Stones about him in terms of how cool he is as a player, and he's got a lovely left foot anyway, a very cultured left foot, and I think he's going to be a top player for Spurs in the future. It's almost like the way he's evolved into that position at the moment. I'm not saying he's going to be maybe a centre back in the future. I'm fairly certain he'd rather be in the full back position, but it's almost like a Gareth Bale-esque, where Bale couldn't get into the team. Suddenly he was thrust into the team when it didn't look likely, and he's kind of took it in his stride. But fair play to the lad, having come from Leeds in the summer, finding it difficult to get minutes. For me, and again as a neutral, I've been so impressed with the way he's adapted the last few weeks.
Yeah, I've got to say he's probably been one of our standout players. Absolutely, he's played left back, right back, centre back, like across the. He's done that within the game as well. It's not like he's done it games. He's literally done it within the game as well. I've been massively impressed with him. I went out to Budapest to watch us in the Europa League, and we were really close to the pitch there, and he was right in front of us. And I have to say, he was so cool and calm on the ball, knew what he was doing, wasn't bullied, all that kind of stuff. And I was super impressed with him. I think his main position is centre midfield. But we're yet to see him get anywhere near that. But I agree. I think he's going to be one for the future. And I can understand why they paid 40 million for him, albeit we did get 15 million, I think, for Joe Rodon, and went the other way. Because if we didn't buy him for 40 million, then I can tell you his value is going up every week. And you can kind of see why they do it. It's just frustrating as a fan, because you don't want to see kids coming. You want to see ready-made players that are going to make you better. But for me, arguably, this kid's come in and has made us better at 18. And I think that's, that is credit to those that are kind of looking for these players for us, the recruitment team bringing that in. It's just that over the years, we've had so many duffers that, you're always a bit sceptical until you actually see them play and see them produce for you,
Yeah, absolutely. Another one, and again, I'll probably more refer to you, but it's just a player who's caught my eye over the last few weeks, is Lucas Bergvall. Again, a proper throwback in terms of box-to-box midfielder, so combative, so athletic, very decent on the ball, it seems to me. Obviously scored a crucial goal against Liverpool, which it seemed to me was deserved in terms of in getting some outcome from the performance he's put in. How have you found him, obviously, compared to some of your other players?
Yeah, so he got off to a little bit of a stickier start, to be fair. It was expected to kind of just come in and play a bit part role. It came on, I can't think who it was now, but Dragusin got sent off. And because he got sent off, it kind of whipped him straight off from his position. So he kind of lost his opportunity. And since then, he kind of struggled to kind of get into the team and really stamp his authority. But certainly over the last few games, even at Arsenal, I thought he played particularly well, one of our standout players. But then on top of that, against Liverpool, he was really good. So I think he's kind of coming into his own. He's finding his feet. He's getting that little bit more where players are kind of expecting him to do stuff and trusting him to do it. And I think I think that's helping him. And I think he's realised that actually I can be stronger in the challenge. I can keep hold of the ball. I can pick a pass and stuff. And against Arsenal, in the second half, we went with Maddison and Kulu and Bergvall in the centre, all are basically attacking midfielders. And we were watching it in the pub and we were like, who's going to protect this defence, right? Who's going to protect? There's like this massive hole there. But actually, he dropped back into a 6. And I thought he did really, really well. He kind of came in and we were really open. And he kind of picked up that role. And I think he's just basically getting more trusted. And people were expecting him to do what he's doing. I think he knows that himself. I think he needs to be a little bit careful with some of his challenges, kind of diving in a little bit. Sometimes you have to kind of think about that. But that's finding your feet, isn't it? And understanding what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. So, but yeah, I think one for the future for sure. Again, another really good recruitment, not a lot of money coming in. And had to get him at the right time because he was on trial at Man United, I think, at one point, and so on. So, this is the thing now. You have to get these players as early as you can. It's just that from a fan's point of view, you want to make sure someone's coming in who's going to actually improve you now, not in the future, because it's the now that you need them.
Yeah, you alluded obviously that, or you alluded to the fact that you believe maybe I would suggest some of the more senior pros have not been performing. Which ones are on the tip of your tongue?
So Bissouma, I think he's kind of in and out. Like one game he'll be really good, and then another game he'll kind of just drift and doesn't seem to be really, really in it. Sonny, I think he's probably carrying some kind of injury because, even by his high standards, he's not playing to the standard that he was. And that may be an age thing, I don't know. But he certainly probably needs to be rotated more than he's able at the moment. So I think a little bit concerned about his form. Maddison, another one, hit and miss. I mean, he can be absolutely brilliant at times.
Incredible at times, yeah.
But then he can kind of just disappear, and become the invisible man. So that's a bit of a worry as well. But that may be because he's not getting played as much as he might want to. Whether he's happy or not, I'm not sure. Brennan Johnson is another one who's getting a lot of stick, even though he scored 12 goals this season, right?
He got the traps, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I know more than anything else because I had him in my fancy footy team and he was flying and then suddenly it just completely dries up.
Yeah, the difficulty with him is if he's not arriving in the box late and scoring a goal, he kind of disappears from the game. When he first came in, he was quite good at going forward and kind of taking people on. That seems to have drifted from his game at the moment. His tracking back isn't brilliant either, or it doesn't appear to be all the time. I think he's a good lad. I think he's a good player, and I don't want to write him off. I just think he probably needs a bit of time. So I think he's played. I think I read somewhere that he'd played like 64 games or played in 64 games for us. So he probably could do with a bit of a shake up, a bit of a rest, and a bit of competition. And again, the final one I would call out probably is Pedro Porro, who probably really does need a break because he's kind of. I mean, you saw on Wednesday, he kind of got dumped on his arse because he was in no man's land and that, and he's kind of going forward. He's brilliant defensively. There's question marks from time to time certainly against good teams. So there's a few in there that probably either need a break or need a shake up or need some competition to kind of focus their attention, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness to Pedro Porro, and we'll probably come on to this in a moment when we preview our game, it's tough, I think, for a fullback when, the centre-back just seems to be rotating constantly for different reasons, suspension, injury, and whatever, because as you say, he is very much an attacking fullback, but when you're playing in that role, and particularly, I guess, under Ange, and you're expected to get up to one byline and get yourself back in, it's easier when you've got that understanding with your teammates. Again, Bassoum is probably another one that you would expect to cover those positions when Pedro Porro gets forward, or maybe double up at times, which he probably needs. We'll probably come on to that in a moment when we preview the game. Obviously, going into our game at the weekend, new manager is coming on our end. I wouldn't say a great deal has changed from the Everton to the first game, aside from a bit more energy from the players. Coming to Goodison, any concerns in particular from your point of view where you think Everton might get at Spurs?
Well, I think obviously the biggest thing for us is that's been talked about by my friends and stuff around Spurs is obviously new manager bounce. I know it's David Moyes coming back and all the rest of it, but I don't think David Moyes is a bad manager personally. I think he did really well when he was at Everton the first time, and obviously he did okay at West Ham. Maybe not the football they wanted, but got them a trophy first time in probably 50 years or something. So I think the manager bounce is always going to be a difficult thing. Our away performances have been poor as well. We haven't been great away from home. Some would argue we've not been great at home either. But so that's a bit of a worry from that point of view. Obviously, the key things are going to be for Everton. Are they going to keep us out for the first 20 minutes? Keep us quiet, shut us down, let us know you're there, and kind of then pick on the set pieces, which we seem to. It gets called out as a massive issue. I don't believe it is as massive issue as it gets called out, but it is still an issue. Where we kind of seem to get caught out quite a lot, certainly corners and that sort of stuff. But I think the more frustrated we get, I think that's what will help Everton if they can kind of keep us quiet, maybe get a goal ahead, and then maybe kind of just slow the game down and stop us playing. But if you let us in and you let us in early, and then you're chasing the game and you're open, then I think you will have problems, because even with our team being on a poor run, we can beat anybody. And we can score for fun, if it really happens. I mean, most of our wins have been 4+ goals or 3+ goals sort of thing. And when we're losing by 1. So we can score goals if we get the space and the time on the ball, and I think that'll be the key.
Yeah, I mean, the first part of your piece there sounded like David Moyes' team talk. Imagine keep them out the first 20 minutes. Obviously, let them know we're there. They've got a few players maybe on the younger side, a few players that are out of form. Letting them know they're going to be in for a difficult afternoon is probably going to tip them one way or the other. I think I completely agree. There's no way we can try and go toe-to-toe with you. There's certainly no way I think that we can try and commit too many players forward and leave gaps down the sides and inside the full-backs, because that's where you've got players that can definitely hurt us. I think, again, having watched you, and I'm glad you mentioned about James Maddison, I think a lot of it, if he starts the game, centres around which James Maddison we see, because we've had so many games against James Maddison when he played for Leicester where he's absolutely ran the show and was unplayable. Whereas as other games, whether it was because he was playing a certain position or against a certain couple of players, he's gone missing or disappeared. I think he's a huge player in this game, because you're going to have the lion's share of possession. I think that goes without saying, really, because we've not got a team that's blessed with technicians and play. And the style of football, as you know, from David Moyes, isn't to dominate the ball. It's more to dominate areas of the pitch. So I think it'd be really interesting how quickly Maddison settles into the game and how often he can get into them little pockets that he likes to get into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I say, I love James Maddison. I don't want to sound like I'm slagging him off. I think he's a great player, and he's obviously a great lad as well. But the difficulty is if he's played out of the game, he can easily then drift and disappear, and you can't afford that when you're one of the best players on the pitch. You can't afford to go missing because it just doesn't help us at all. Because if he's not playing well, then we're not going to play well unless somebody else picks up that mantle. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for from Bergvall or Kulusevski. I mean, Kulusevski's been brilliant this season. He's probably his best season.
He's into midfield quite a bit as well, hasn't he? In that kind of management role at times.
Yeah, so he's pulled him in from the right-hand side where he's more effective. Unfortunately, over the last couple of games, he's probably had his poorest games for us this season, which is disappointing. But again, another one who's played so much football and we've relied on so much, even like coming on against Tamworth, for instance, having to have those guys come on for that is just really disappointing. But yeah, I mean, we've got the players that can do it. But if Maddison doesn't turn up, then Kulu has to. If Kulu doesn't turn up, then Bergvall's going to have to. So someone's going to have to make that happen in the middle there, especially if you're getting frustrated by a tough defence with not a lot of space and all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure David Moyes will be thinking about. Because what he's going to want to do, he's going to want to not lose, right? He's going to want to make sure that he solidifies, doesn't lose, and gives us a good game and looks to maybe nick one or get ahead at some point late on in the game if it needs to. He's going to want to stop us playing. So that means that those players I've mentioned will need to be at their best.
Yeah, and I think in particular that the midfield players are going to have to get up and cover runners, because the difference between David Moyes as opposed to Sean Dyche, I'm not going to be too disrespectful of Sean Dyche as other podcasts have, is that David Moyes will try and get the ball wide a lot more, and he'll look to overload in the wide areas and get plenty of crosses into the box. And I think that was the more encouraging aspect of our play against Villa. As you could see, that there was probably more crosses in that Villa game than we've seen in the whole of the season combined. And I think that's going to be a big test for your full-backs, and as we said before, your midfielders tracking not only the overlapping wide players but the players arriving in the box, which is something we haven't seen enough of this season.
What was your view on the sacking of Sean Dyche and moving back to Moyes? How was you feeling about it? Was it a case of you needed this change, or was you a bit disappointed about it that it just didn't work out? Because I mean, he'd done well for you, right? After all the problems of last season, he deserves a lot of credit for kind of keeping you in the league, right?
Without doubt, going into this season and make no bones about it, I'd probably say up until maybe October, November, 90% of our fan base were in support of giving Dyche the respect and allowing him to see out his contract till the summer. And when I say see out his contract, this season was very much, okay, show us what you can do, Sean. You've got us through 2 tough relegation fights. We effectively got 48 points last season. So although the points deductions made it look like we were relegation fodder, we actually weren't. So It was very much in the summer. Look, you've bought a few players in. All right, we lost Nana, but any Evertonian who watched Everton every week last season will probably put Nana in a similar bracket to Basuma, where one week you get a world beater, 3 or 4 games, he's pretty much anonymous. So he's had a bit of a chance to bring some players in. He wanted shuffle the pack a little bit, and it's actually got worse. So we got to Christmas, and I think most of the Everton fan base were starting to get concerned. The results were not getting any better. We were obviously going into a tough run of fixtures. As Sean Dyche does, he picked up a few 0-0s and obviously respectable results against good sides, and it probably covered some of them cracks. But the moment we got another home game where we were expected to be on the front foot and win, he's fell short again. And I think after Christmas, when we had a home game or 2 and we didn't manage to get goals in those games, it was just the point, I think, where the owners had looked at and thought there's actually a genuine risk here. You've got Wolves have rolled the dice on a new manager and got a few back-to-back wins. Leicester have rolled the dice, maybe ineffectively, but still there was a little bit of a bounce there as well. I think they were looking at thinking, well, it only probably takes 2 or 3 wins from the teams behind us, and suddenly we're right in that relegation zone and having to scramble to get out. So to answer your question, it was definitely a tinge of regret that he didn't get the chance to see out the season. But I think he was given ample opportunity. Yeah. And it's certainly not, despite the fact there was a bit of bitterness towards the end from Dyche and maybe from the fans, there wasn't a lack of gratitude for the work he'd done. And there wasn't a lack of respect for how difficult the circumstances were, for the majority of his tenure. But you know, David Moyes, you've had it before as a Spurs fan where a manager comes back in, you're always unsure how that's going to happen. I don't think there's any doubt that David Moyes knows the club, knows the fan base, probably knows those little extra bits that he can add to the team that maybe Sean Dyche wasn't able to do. This window is going to be huge. I know we're not going to have, you know, tens of millions to spend, but, you know, if we're to believe that, you know, the press and the media, the PSR worries are slightly behind us. We have got a little bit of money to spend. The owners obviously have got the resources. So it'll be interesting to see what we can bring in this month, because I think the Villa game has highlighted probably more of the things that Sean Dyche was dealing with, that we haven't got the quality in the final third. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is so far off the boil. It's untrue. Like he's probably 12 months overdue any type of form, which as our probably our only real recognised number 9 is a big issue for us. So yeah, again, to go back to the start of the question, I think it was the right move. I think the timing was spot on, because David Moyes got time. As I say, he's got the window to maybe bring in some players that helps us pick up some results. But yeah, we're not under any illusions that it's going to be, you know, night and day style of play and free flowing football, because and to be honest, mate, that's not what we haven't seen that for a long time anyway. We're not living in the 80s here. Everton haven't been a team that goes and dominates games in the Premier League for the best part of 20 years. So that's not the expectation. It's to be competing again, to be beating teams at home, and to be taking the game to teams when we can, and just, you know, putting our stamp on more games, as opposed to waiting for the opposition to fail and then hoping that we score a goal from a set play.
Yeah, I feel it. I absolutely feel that pain, and that's why I asked the question, right? Because we're kind of going through the same thing with Ange. It's like, you know, there's a growing amount of fans that are looking for a change, to see if that helps or whatever. But I'm just not convinced. If I'm honest, I'm not convinced that changing the manager at this point is a great idea. You know, there are issues around us in terms of our injury crisis and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, and I'd love to see him actually get a decent squad that he could kind of work with, that could rotate and so on. Because like you're saying, you know, we've not been great since the 80s either. I know all these expectations that Tottenham are this team that should always be in the top 4 or should always be whatever. I personally don't believe that. I think, you know, we're so far away from that since we lost Pochettino and we didn't have the investment then. We've been also rounds the whole time. We haven't really been a decent club since the 80s. So, you know, to see us actually competing, playing decent football and stuff, for me was something I really, really wanted. Unfortunately, it's just not working at the moment. But do you then go back to just pragmatic, grinding out a result just for the sake of it? You know, and that's the real difficult bit. So I feel your pain. I feel your pain.
I'm glad you've said that, because it was going to be my last question before we obviously go on and predict the game on Sunday. Is around Ange. And I mean, as a neutral, as you can imagine, I think he's brilliant, because he's such a refreshing attitude to the game and a fan's attitude towards the game, in terms of, well, let's go and beat them and let's go and take the game to them. Obviously, there's that stubbornness about him, which I'm sure as a fan can be frustrating when the results maybe aren't going your way. But I look at the injury issues you've had, and you're just like, God, is any chance of him getting a break in terms of having a clean set of tools to work with, and as you say, being able to rotate. And in fairness to him, he's very rarely moans about it. He doesn't go on about these injuries. He just look at it. It is what it is. It's part of the game, and you've got to have a bit of respect for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as a man, I think he's a brilliant man. I think his empathy for people when they're going through problems and all that kind of stuff, and understanding it from a fan's perspective, and saying, if you want to dream of winning something, then why not? That's what you're here for. I get all of that, and I love all of that. I think people talk about his stubbornness. I personally don't think it's a case of being stubborn in that he's only ever going to attack. He's not stupid. He knows you can't win games by just attacking. But I think it's just the media kind of really play it up, and then we all buy into the narrative because we're all clickbaited by all those kind of things out there, and we all jump on the bandwagon, and that's a disappointing thing. I think he's a really good manager, certainly a good people person, and he kind of brought us together. We were in such a terrible place as a fan base before he came
negative,
in.
wasn't it? It was poisonous almost before he came in.
Honestly, you couldn't even sell your seat. Like no one wanted to buy it. So like even if you didn't want to go, you had to go because no one else is going to take your ticket off your hands. So and the atmosphere in the stadium was really poor, and it was just awful. So when he came in, and we had those first 10 games, he showed what his football can do and what attitude he's got. I think people forget about that, and I know it's a long time ago, but you only need to put that kind of run together again, and things look a lot different. We're still in the FA Cup. We're still in the Carabao Cup, albeit, tough tie against Liverpool at Anfield, I know, but we're still in there. We're still fighting for it, and stranger things have happened. So, for me, I think he's got to see out the season. I think it's important to see what we get in January if there's an opportunity. I think new goalkeeper's been really much appreciated. He's a breath of fresh air. 21 years of age.
As well. That's you talk about the recruitment again. That is some fines to find a goalie at 21 who's took to it so well. I mean, I seen him on the team sheet. It was Liverpool's first game.
Liverpool was his first game. Then he played against Tamworth, and then of course at Arsenal. And I think the only thing he did wrong at Arsenal was the first goal where he kind of didn't get down to it quick enough or whatever. But he shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place. So, like in terms of how he's played as a 21-year-old coming into a new league in a new country, I think he's done pretty well. So, it'd be interesting to see how he goes. He's very commanding in the box, a bit more so than maybe Vicario was. So, I'm a little bit more confident at corners and at free kicks than I was. Put it that way. So I'd rather him in the goal against a set piece, coming in from the likes of Everton and Arsenal and teams like that. But yeah, so we'll see. We'll see where we go from there.
Okay, well, on that note, I'm going to ask you for a prediction, Lee.
So I've already done a prediction for a couple of other people, which we do all the time for all the games, right? So, and I predicted it's going to be a 2-1 because we always concede a goal. But I think we've got enough. We've got enough quality to beat you. So, and a lot of this is from the heart, right? As always, I'm a Tottenham fan. I never really want to predict them losing, so I kind of went in for a 2-1 win, tight game, but just enough.
I don't blame you. And I'm going to go the other way. It's exactly the same as we went with the Villa prediction. He predicted 2-1. I predicted 2-1 the other way. We should have had 2 goals against Villa. To be fair, we didn't. Obviously, the story of Calvert-Lewin missing more chances. I think another few days on the training ground, working on a few bits. Yeah, same. I mean, I can't point to the quality side for us, but I think we can get a couple of goals from set plays at least, if not one from open play. I definitely wouldn't back us to keep a clean sheet against you lads. I think we're going to have to probably ride our luck a little bit as well. I remember actually the last time David Moyes was in charge, there was a few games we had against you at home where we managed to get really late winners or late equalisers. It was one game actually, I think it was around 2009 maybe a little bit earlier, where I think we were 1-0 down going into the 89th minute and got 2 goals late on. I would snap your hands off to something like that, but yeah, I think it'll be in that type of fashion where we're maybe either 1-0 down or it's at 1-1 and we kind of get a really late goal from a long ball or a set play or a deep cross. But I think we need a little bit of luck. We'll need probably a little bit of disorganisation at times. I definitely think we'll need James Maddison to be on the other side of the coin in terms of being off the boil. So yeah, I'm here's to hoping on my end rather than expecting.
Yeah, you might want to stick a couple of quid on Calvert-Lewin to get a goal, mate. To be honest with you, because you know what they say, Dr. Tottenham's in the house, right? So we always seem to help break some of those difficult records for players that haven't scored or teams that haven't had a win and all that kind of stuff. So it always seems to be us. You know, so it might be worth sticking a couple of quid on him, mate. You never know.
Another similarity between the clubs. But again, as always, Lee, thanks so much for your time. Anyone who wants to give Lee a follow, it's the Dorset Spare. We'll tag him into the description below and into the title of the podcast. But again, thanks for your time, Lee. After Sunday, best of luck. Hopefully, Ange sticks around for the rest of the season. Hopefully, you get more of your players back and he gets a fair crack at it. And yeah, best of luck, mate.
Cheers, buddy. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and good luck for the rest of the season to the Everton boys. I hope it goes okay. Obviously, after Sunday, as you said, and hope to speak to you again in next season when you're in your new home.
And you're welcome, Lee. If you want to have a trip down, have a little drink, then give us a shout. Hopefully, we can welcome you, as I say, at our new fancier accommodation.
Good.
Tom, Lee, all the best, mate. Cheers.
Buddy.